So now that we've got a good grasp on cost curves, we're going to go into a set of videos that are going to talk about different kinds or different models of markets. So I guess I should say different model markets. So the first one that we're going to talk about is perfect competition. And what I want to say before I even go into talking about it is that I want to say that these are models and that there is most likely not any single market in the world that perfectly matches any one of these models. But they do match, some of them match pretty darn well. And the intuition that comes from these models is really, really useful in the real world. So that's reason enough for studying them, even if they don't match perfectly. So in this made-up world, what is a perfectly competitive market? So there are four major characteristics that make a market perfectly competitive. So the first one is that the market is so large that both buyers and sellers have no impact on the price. And the way that I've always heard this phrased is that both buyers and sellers are price takers. So they have absolutely no influence on the price of the market. So the second thing is that the product being traded is exactly the same. And the big word for exactly the same is homogeneous. So for this, think of like oranges. And we're not talking about different types of oranges because that's, again, that would be a abstraction from a perfectly competitive market. But imagine that every single kind of orange is exactly the same. There's no difference whatsoever where it's grown, what kind of tree it came off of, what brand it is, if it's organic or not organic. All of those are not perfect, are reasons that the orange market is not perfectly competitive. But if we just take oranges as a whole and pretend that there's no difference between them, then it would be a perfectly competitive market. So it has to be a homogeneous good. Then there has to be perfect information, and this is the one that really kind of irks a lot of people, me included, is that in the real world we don't have perfect information. So it kind of just toys with the conclusions that we see here. But for a perfectly competitive market, you do need perfect information. And then lastly, you need costless entry and exit. So what this means is that firms can enter the market with no startup costs, and firms can leave the market without any penalty for closure, without any penalty for shutting down. And this is in the long run. So then that begs the question, what is the long run and what is the short run? And I think that I talked about this a couple videos ago, like maybe 5 or 6, but I wanted to just talk about it again. So for this set of videos, the long run is when firms can open and close. And another way of saying this is that capital is mobile. So you can decide where to put your money, if you want to invest it in the orange growing industry, if you want to invest it in the surfboard industry, or if you want to invest it in the Apple industry. You can choose that in the long run. In the short run, firms can't open or close, so capital is immobile. And so the other thing I should say is that in the short run, the firm chooses Q. So it chooses how much to produce. And in the long run, the firm chooses whether to stay in business or not. So in the short run, the firm chooses Q. And in the long run, it's whether to stay in business or to shut down. All right, so with that, I'm going to take a little break just to have this be the introduction to perfect competition. And then in the next video, we're going to go to the conclusions.